larynx and trachea. As we know, we are in COVID-19 pandemic spread, and what do we know about COVID-19? Predominant spread by respiratory droplets, someone coughing, and contact, hands, surface, eyes, and mouth. So spread is similar to seasonal influenza. Practicing same precautions to minimize the spread of influenza will provide protection against COVID-19, as basic hand hygiene and cough into elbow and tissues, stay home if feeling unwell, encouraging face mask for suspected cases, and also as WHO recommend, don't touch your eyes, nose and mouth, because these three sides opening to respiratory system. Most common symptoms are respiratory symptoms: cough, difficulty in breathing, dyspnea, with or without fever. So this may cause pneumonia. And we here, this CT shows patches, maybe ground glass opacity, and even pneumonia. So you must don't forget this recommendation. Don't touch your face, mask, hand hygiene, and keep a distance, keep away from others. The larynx and trachea. We hope by the end of this lecture the student will be able to define different parts of larynx, cartilage, ligaments, structures, muscles of the larynx, joints, locate the internal structure of larynx, and describe the structure of trachea and extension and both clinical applications. The upper respiratory tract is formed by a nose and pharynx, and may be considered other cavity also as a part of upper respiratory tract. We start the lower respiratory tract by larynx, and then trachea, bronchi, and both lungs, pleura, and so on. So the larynx is the inlet for lower respiratory tract and is the organ of phonation or voice box, lies in the anterior midline of the neck. Location, as we said, the larynx constitutes organ of phonation and forms a protective sphincter to the respiratory system. Extend from tongue to trachea below. Lies opposite cervical number 3 or third cervical vertebrae, fourth cervical vertebrae, fifth cervical tail, sixth cervical vertebrae. Its upper end open into pharynx. The lower part of pharynx called laryngopharynx or hypopharynx. The framework of larynx is composed of 9 pieces of cartilage connected by joints, ligaments, membrane, moved by 8 muscles entrancing and contain cavity of mucous membrane. The cartilage divided into single and paired. Single, 3 large cartilage called thyroid, or formed thyroid, cricoid, and epiglottis, and paired 6 cartilage, arytenoid, corniculate, and cuneiform. The single cartilage formed by first one leaf-like projection and valve-like called epiglottis. Second one shield-like cartilage in shape and like open book or shield called thyroid. The last one and the lowest just before the trachea, ring-like cartilage called cricoid cartilage. As we see here, leaf-like from behind called epiglottis, and this valve-like cartilage or valve act as a valve for respiratory tract for inlet, and the open book like open book or shield posteriorly called thyroid cartilage. The last one and the lowest one called cricoid cartilage. This single cartilage. What about paired cartilage? At shoulder above lamina of cricoid cartilage, this pyramidal cartilage, two, one right and one left, act like ruler or would key like a ruler here on the sloping shoulder of the cricoid cartilage called arytenoid cartilage, which attached to vocal cord, and there's two smaller corniculate cuneiform cartilage, corniculate horn-like cartilage, and this small cuneiform cartilage. The 6 paired cartilage. We start with the thyroid cartilage, the largest one, the large laryngeal cartilage called thyroid cartilage. Consists of two lamina like book, open book, connected anteriorly by or fused anterior by angle, more prominent in male than female, called Adam's apple or laryngeal prominent. It's more prominent in male, and this affects the sound of male, make different from the females. The posterior border, there is two projection above and below called superior and inferior horn, and two tubercle also just anterior to the horn called superior thyroid tubercle and below and inferior tubercle, and two line in the lamina called oblique line or oblique ridge. The thyroid cartilage like open book, two lamina, and there is projection and horn and tubercle. Anteriorly there is a laryngeal prominent or Adam's apple. In male, the angle more acute and more prominent than female. Another cartilage, single cartilage, cricoid cartilage, is the lowest cartilage of the laryngeal cartilage. Cricoid is ring-like of hyaline cartilage known as ring, form the inferior wall of the larynx, smaller and thicker and smaller than thyroid, and form the lower posterior part of the wall of the larynx. Ring-like, circle, rounded all over. Anteriorly there is arch, and posteriorly there is lamina, and the two facets for another cartilage, smaller cartilage called arytenoid cartilage. We can consider the cricoid cartilage is the key of the larynx because it attached or connected to all other cartilage, as we said now. It has the shape of ring, lamina anteriorly and arch, lamina posteriorly and arch anteriorly, and is lowest part of the larynx. Arch anteriorly, lamina posteriorly, carries the arytenoid at its shoulder of lamina, connected by called cricoid joint, as we see now, or cricoarytenoid joint. Epiglottis, valve-like, epiglottis, it is a large leaf shaped piece of elastic cartilage that covered with epithelium. Stem of the cartilage or of the epiglottis attached to the anterior rim of thyroid cartilage and also connected to hyoid bone above the thyroid. The broad superior leaf portion of epiglottis is unattached and free to move up and down like trapdoor to lower respiratory tract. The free extremity connected by ligaments called thyroepiglottic ligaments. Arytenoid cartilage is a triangular piece cartilage, hyaline, located on the posterior and superior border of cricoid, triangular, located at posterior and superior border of the cricoid cartilage, at back of the larynx. As we hear, back of the larynx. Each is pyramidal in form and has a three surface, base and apex, base, and has a three surface. Posterior surface is triangular, smooth and concave. Anterior lateral surface is convex and rough. Attached to the vocal fold and intrinsic pharyngeal muscles, supported by arytenoid cartilage. Vocal process for vocal cord or vocal fold, and this muscular process for muscles. Act like a ruler on the shoulder of the cricoid cartilage. Cuneiform, small cartilage, very small cartilage, cuneiform and cuneate, just club shaped, placed on the either side in epiglottic fold. Club shape placed on the either side in the epiglottic fold, just in front arytenoid ligaments, and give support the focal fold, just support to the vocal folds and lateral aspect of epiglottis. Cuneiform and corniculate cartilage. Just support focal fold. Corniculate cartilage and cuneiform cartilage of Resberg and Santorini corniculate. There is another small cartilage called Thyroid Cartilage, but not considered as a part of larynx. We know only 9 cartilage of cricoid and also arytenoid. There is 3 main joints of larynx: cricothyroid joints, cricoarytenoid joints, Arytenoid joints. Cricothyroid joints between thyroid and cricoid. This transverse axis, rotatory movement around axis, just anterior, sliding anterior and posterior. And there is another rotatory movement between arytenoid and cricoid, but a vertical axis, upward and downward, as we said, or abduction, adduction, as we will see after minutes. One of each other, a synovial joint between the base of arytenoid and cartilage and upper. Cricothyroid joints, one in each joint, a synovial joint between inferior horn of the thyroid cartilage and cricoid cartilage, another joint between cricoarytenoid, one on each other, also synovial joint between base of arytenoid and upper border of lamina of cricoid, other smaller cartilage between Arytenoid joints, and this for just fine movement to our tensor for vocal cord. The joints of larynx, all these joints of cricoid rotate on the inferior horn around transverse axis, as we said, cricothyroid, and there's another rotation of gliding in vertical axis. These joints permit two movement, cricoarytenoid joints allows two movement, or permit two movements, rotation on the side, on the gliding anterior and posteriorly. The rotation allow changing the width of epiglottis or vocal cord, and the glidings allows approach tension, relaxation and tensing of the joints of the vocal cords. The ligaments and membranes also divide into extrinsic and intrinsic membranes or ligaments. The extrinsic formed of THYROHYOID between thyroid and hyoid bone, or cricotrachea, or hyoepiglottis. As we see here, the three cartilage connected to the surrounding by ligaments. Thyroid connected to hyoid, or epiglottis connected to hyoid. If thyroid connected to hyoid, called THYROHYOID. If hyoid connected to epiglottis, hyoepiglottic. And the last one, cricoid cartilage, the lowest, connected below to trachea, called cricotrachea. This extrinsic. Each cartilage attached to surrounding hyoid superiorly and trachea inferiorly. Intrinsic ligaments or membrane. Also, inside the larynx, there is quadrangular membrane and vestibular ligaments, as we see, and other cricovocal membrane and vocal ligaments. The thyrohyoid membrane, one of the extrinsic membrane connected between thyroid and hyoid bone above, extend from the upper border of thyroid cartilage to the upper border of posterior surface of hyoid bone. The median part of this membrane called median thyrohyoid ligaments, and posteriorly on both sides another thickening of membrane called lateral thyrohyoid ligaments. This membrane piercing by superior laryngeal vessels and internal laryngeal nerve to reach inside the larynx. The lateral thyrohyoid ligaments contain cartilage nodules, as we said, cartilage trachea here. As we said, this membrane piercing by internal laryngeal nerve and superior laryngeal vessels. Thyrohyoid membrane, median thyrohyoid ligaments, and this lateral thyroid, which contain cartilage tracheaceae, cartilage called lateral thyrohyoid ligaments, piercing two structures here by superior laryngeal vessels and internal laryngeal nerve. The cricothyroid ligaments, another ligaments between cricoid and thyroid. These ligaments connect cricoid to thyroid, cricoid and this membrane between cricoid and thyroid. Also formed between median cricothyroid and two lateral cricothyroid ligament as thyrohyoid membrane above. And this lateral cricothyroid ligaments contain cricovocal membrane. The median cricothyroid is the thin thickening of the ligaments which connect the adjacent borders of cricoid to thyroid cartilage, and this ligament is overlapped by cricothyroid muscles. The lateral cricothyroid ligaments, these ligaments attach inferior to the upper cricoid cartilage, superiorly into two attachments to the inner surface of thyroid cartilage anterior and to the vocal process of arytenoid cartilage posterior. Cricothyroid ligament divided into median part and to lateral part. Median cricothyroid ligament here and here, cricovocal membrane. The focal ligaments, as we see here, between cricovocal membrane. The vocal ligaments are fold through vocal cord, this upper part of the cricothyroid ligaments. And this cricothyroid ligaments, the upper border of the cricothyroid membrane called vocal ligaments or through vocal cord. The lateral cricothyroid ligaments and overlying mucosa close to the trachea, inlet except for central epiglottis. This lateral cricothyroid ligaments forming the vocal cord. Vocal process of arytenoid, and this thyroid is cricoid, complete ring. Only complete ring, only complete cartilage all around of the respiratory system, the cricoid, and lost cartilage in the thyroid and the larynx. If we see this ligaments attached between cricoid and thyroid, the lateral border, the vocal cord attached to arytenoid here. And this called ligameint or opening between two vocal cords. Another extrinsic ligaments between epiglottis and hyoid called hyoepiglottic ligament. This highest one and lowest ligament, extrinsic ligament between cricoid and trachea called cricotracheal ligaments. The intrinsic ligaments, we have two membrane, one quadrangular membrane or vestibular, one quadrangular membrane between epiglottis and thyroid, arytenoid, and another membrane between quadrangular membrane, quadrate membrane, and other cricovocal membrane. There is sinus between two membrane called sinus of larynx. If we see sinus of larynx here, we see lower border of quadrate ligaments and upper border of cricovocal ligaments. The lower border here formed by mucous membrane fold called false vocal fold. But the upper border of cricothyroid ligaments formed vocal ligaments, or if contain mucous membrane, change name to fold, called true vocal cord. Remember, there's two intrinsic membrane, quadrate membrane between epiglottis and thyroid, and the upper border between arytenoid and epiglottis called epiglottic ligaments. If contain mucous membrane, called epiglottic folds. Or sorry, if covered by mucous membrane or mucosa, called fold. If no mucosa, called ligaments, epiglottic folds. The lower part called vestibular ligament, if covered by the mucous membrane, called vestibular fold. Quadrate membrane formed its upper part called epiglottic and lower part called vestibular ligament, another name false vocal cord. There's sinus here, then upper part called vocal ligament or true vocal cord, if covered by mucosa, called vocal fold, and lower part called cricothyroid ligaments. Hyoepiglottic ligaments, hyo, connect hyoid bone to epiglottis, and another ligaments between epiglottis and thyroid called thyroepiglottic ligaments. So the epiglottis can stability of epiglottis in the respiratory system connected anteriorly and above to hyoid, below to thyroid, and posteriorly to arytenoid. This another pictures for vocal ligaments, which considered the upper border of cricovocal membrane. This upper border is covered by mucosa called vocal fold. So it's true vocal cord, attached anteriorly to the middle of angle of thyroid cartilage and posteriorly to the vocal process of arytenoid cartilage. This ligament is movable and affected if there is more prominent here as a male, and make the voice of the male with the mucosa. We can see here the inlet of the opening of the inlet of the larynx. This picture is we sect the pharynx from posterior, and here just back to the nose, pharynx, nasopharynx, and there is oral cavity, tongue, back of the tongue, and this uvula, and then this laryngopharynx or hypopharynx, nasopharynx, oropharynx, then laryngopharynx. This opening is the inlet of the larynx, and we see here epiglottis, as we see, and there's posteriorly this arytenoid and two cartilage, cuneiform and corniculate cartilage, and this epiglottic fold, epiglottic fold. This opening of the larynx, just lateral to it, there's two fossa inside the pharynx, not larynx, called pyriform fossa. Zoom to inlet pharynx, as we said, epiglottis, epiglottic fold. It's two cartilage, cuneiform and corniculate, and on the lateral side of the larynx there is fossa here, and on the right, on the left, inside the pharynx, called pyriform fossa. The cavity of the larynx, as we see, this epiglottis attached to the hyoid by hyoepiglottic fold or ligaments, sinus of the larynx, another name ventricle of the larynx, the upper portal here called vestibular fold, and this fold called vocal fold. This thyroid cartilage and this cricoid cartilage, anteriorly small arch of the cricoid, and posteriorly called lamina of cricoid. Thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage, anteriorly arch of the cricoid, posteriorly lamina of cricoid. This arytenoid vocal cord. We can divide this larynx from sides. We dissected the larynx from the side to see the sagittal view of the larynx. Vestibular fold, vocal fold, sinus or ventricle of the larynx. The vestibular and vocal fold, which project medially from the lateral wall of the laryngeal cavity, constrict it and divide it into vestibule, middle chamber, and infraglottic cavity. As we said here, this sinus just above vestibule of the larynx, epiglottis inlet, vestibule of the larynx, sinus or ventricle of the larynx, infraglottic area. The ventricle contains saccule of the larynx, containing mucus glands for lubrication to the vocal cord. This sinus called sinus of Morgagni. Again, epiglottis inlet, this is called vestibule of the larynx, and the sinus or ventricle, this infraglottic area. This view is a laryngoscopic view of the larynx. This leaf-like, prod-like part of the epiglottis, this tongue, posteriorly this arytenoid and corniculate cuneiform, as we know, epiglottic fold, and the T2 fold we see here default this view from above. First one called, and upper one called vestibular fold, and another one called vocal cord. Muscle. So muscle of the larynx divided into extrinsic and intrinsic muscles and ligaments. Extrinsic muscles, depressors, extrinsic attached to the hyoid. Depressors like sternothyroid, sternohyoid, thyrohyoid. Another extrinsic attached to thyroid, elevator, palatopharyngeus, stylopharyngeus muscles. Intrinsic muscles also, with muscles acting on vocal cord or muscles acting on epiglottis. The muscles acting on the vocal cord affect its length and tension, cricothyroid or thyroarytenoid. Adduct the vocal cord, the only abductor to vocal cord, posterior cricoarytenoid. The others adductors to the vocal cord, lateral cricoarytenoid, thyroarytenoid, interarytenoid or transverse muscles. Muscles acting on epiglottis, epiglottic muscles or thyroepiglotticus. So remember, the epiglottis connected to arytenoid and thyroid, the two muscles. This acting on epiglottis. If we want to know more about intrinsic muscles, there's 9 muscles: cricothyroid, posterior cricoarytenoid, lateral cricoarytenoid, transverse arytenoid, oblique arytenoid, epiglottic, thyroarytenoid, vocalis is a part of arytenoid, thyroepiglottic muscle. As we see here, arytenoid is a part of all muscles, except cricothyroid and thyroepiglottic. Cricothyroid, the lowest muscles between cricoid and thyroid, and thyroepiglottic, the highest muscles between thyro and epiglottic. Otherwise, there is another muscles attached to arytenoid. How to remember this muscles? Lot of muscles. Remember the arytenoid attached to cricoid, the arytenoid attached to arytenoid attached to thyroid. So cricoarytenoid, posterior and lateral, and thyroarytenoid, vocalis, part of thyroarytenoid. Where between two arytenoids, transverse arytenoid, oblique arytenoids, and epiglottic. So arytenoid connected to all cartilage, connected to thyroid, two muscles, thyroarytenoid, vocalis, it's a part of thyroid, connected to epiglottic, epiglottic, connected to cricoid, cricoarytenoid, posterior and lateral, connected to the another arytenoid by transverse to oblique. This arytenoid. Another one just above this all muscles called cricothyroid. Between just above these all muscles, thyroepiglottic, and just below these muscles, cricothyroid. Cricothyroid between the lowest muscle between cricoid and thyroid. It allows lengthening and tenses vocal fold by sliding thyroid anteriorly and posteriorly. This view, as we see here, a cricoarytenoid. This allow cricoarytenoid rotate arytenoid away from rotate the arytenoid away and laterally, and thus cause abduction of vocal cord. Cricoarytenoid, so-called posterior cricoarytenoid, this muscles. طيب يبقى lateral cricoarytenoid وtransverse arytenoid and others muscles, all muscles, adductors, oblique transverse, and also lateral cricoarytenoid, like this. Posterior is the only abductor. All others muscles attached to arytenoid cause adduction to the vocal cord, oblique, transverse, and even lateral cricoarytenoid. Epiglottic fold is the part of the arytenoid reaching to the epiglottis and cause things close laryngeal inlet, epiglottic, and also this muscles between epiglottis and thyroid called thyroepiglottis action open laryngeal. Thyroepiglottis to open the larynx, and Arytenoid close larynx. If we move the epiglottis anteriorly, open larynx, move posteriorly, close larynx during swallowing. Simple movement. And this oblique and transverse arytenoid ligaments, this posterior cricoarytenoid, remember? Action of the muscle, larynx intrinsic laryngeal muscle may be placed 3 groups according to main action. First group, those who at this remaglottis, this opening called sinus or remaglottis, the posterior and lateral cricoarytenoid and oblique and transverse arytenoid cause those vary the remaglottis, the posterior and lateral cricoarytenoid and oblique and transverse arytenoid. The adduction of vocal cord, close this remaglottis, by all muscles except posterior cricoarytenoid, which is opening by abduction. Second group, regulate the tension of vocal ligaments, tension, cricothyroid and thyroarytenoid vocalis. Cricothyroid and thyroarytenoid vocalis. And third group, those who modify the laryngeal inlet, the oblique arytenoid or epiglottic or thyroepiglottic. This third group, which group? Third group, modify the laryngeal inlet. Thyroepiglottic and Arytenoid. Ary, close the larynx, and thyroepiglottic, open the larynx. The nerve supply, the larynx is supplied by sensory and motor, like tongue. Nerve supply, it can nerve supply of the larynx, the sensory and also motor. The nerve supply The larynx is innervated by branches of vagus nerve on each side, sensory innervation and motor innervation. The sensory innervation to the glottis and laryngeal vestibule by the internal branch of superior laryngeal nerve. By the internal branch of the superior laryngeal nerve, only sensory above vocal cord. The external branch of superior laryngeal nerve innervate the external laryngeal nerve innervate the cricothyroid muscles. This external laryngeal nerve only motor to cricothyroid muscles. Motor innervation to all muscles of the larynx and sensory innervation to subglottic by the recurrent laryngeal nerve. The joker here is a recurrent laryngeal nerve, sensory to below the focal cord and motor to all muscles except cricothyroid, which supplied by sensory laryngeal nerve of superior laryngeal nerve. While sensory input described above in general visceral sensation, diffuse, poorly localized, and the focal fault also receives general somatic sensory innervation, proprioception, and touch by superior laryngeal nerve. So the nerve supply here: internal laryngeal nerve, external laryngeal nerve, and recurrent laryngeal nerve. Internal laryngeal nerve only sensory above vocal cord. External laryngeal nerve is a branch also from superior laryngeal nerve, only motor to cricothyroid. While recurrent laryngeal nerve sensory below vocal cord and motor to all muscles except cricothyroid muscles. Supply from superior laryngeal artery from superior thyroid artery, and inferior laryngeal artery from inferior thyroid artery. Inferior laryngeal artery to the area just below the vocal cord, and superior laryngeal artery from superior thyroid from area just above the vocal cord. As we see here, the superior laryngeal artery with laryngeal nerve, superior laryngeal nerve, piercing to internal laryngeal nerve to thyrohyoid membrane, while the inferior laryngeal artery is close contact to recurrent laryngeal nerve near the lymphatic gland, the focal cord, above focal cord, upper deep cervical, and below focal cord, lower deep cervical groups. Clinical applied, we can see the larynx by scope or laryngoscope. As we see here, this requires laryngeal mirror to see the larynx. Here, this white epiglottis, tongue, back of the tongue, and this arytenoid and two cartilage called cuneiform corniculate, and this airy epiglottic fold, this vocal cord. As you see, this epiglottis and anteriorly, back of the tongue, there is airy epiglottic fold, and this vocal fold or vocal fold. There's ligament. If we see in the vocal cord nodules, this common problems or due to abuse of vocal cord phonation, like in singers, screamers, clergymen, and teachers, called teacher nodules or singers nodules. And also remember that if there is any foreign body can obstruct uh, uh, the airway by entrapped into vocal cord or complete ring of cricoid. As we know, the only complete ring of larynx cricoid, and there's vocal cord, and this cause obstruction of respiratory, may be mobile cartilaginous and membranous tube. Begin act as a continuation of the larynx at lower border of cricoid cartilage. This cricoid cartilage, then trachea. Cricoid cartilage at level of 6 cervical vertebrae. The trachea ends by bifurcation by giving at carina by dividing into right and left principal main bronchi at the level of sternal angle. Sternal angle opposite the disc between the 4th and 5th thoracic vertebrae. Carina is the cartilaginous ridge here within the trachea outside of tracheal bifurcation. So start with C cricoid and end with C carina. In adult, the trachea is about 4.5 centimeters, 4.5 inches, equal 11 and 25 centimeters in length, and 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters in diameter, formed from 15 to 12 to 20 rings of tracheal cartilage. C shape. The structure of trachea, as we see, U-shaped cartilaginous bar or rings of hyaline cartilage embedded in the wall and keeps the trachea patent. And posterior defect is connected by trachealis muscles, which is smooth muscle that connect the posterior free ends of cartilage, and this allow the esophagus posteriorly to push this posterior part during swallowing. Trachea, so trachea is the windpipe. The important landmark here, C, cricoid cartilage, another end into the C, carina, for at level of 6th cervical vertebrae, lined by ciliated columnar epithelium, length from 9 to 12 centimeters and 2 centimeters in diameter. There is 15 to 20 incomplete ring of cartilage. However, the only complete ring in the respiratory system is the cricoid, bridged posteriorly by trachealis muscles. This endoscopic view, as we see here, complete ring or called cricoid, and this ring, incomplete rings U-shape, called trachea. Tell carina at level of sternal angle, the disc between T4 and T5, divided by 2 principal bronchi. It's nice to say the mucosa of the carina is highly sensitive to irritant, and this causes cough reflex. So the severe cough, as in COVID, indication that COVID it may reach to the lungs, and thus we need in this symptoms, if there's severe dry cough, to do CT scan to see if there's any opacity of lungs, pneumonia, and so on. The mean carina, this bifurcation, this ridge called carina, this ridge, cartilaginous ridge called carina, and two bronchi. Okay. Trachea, inside chest X-ray, the airway or air tube extending from cricoid cartilage in the neck, then inside thorax and the superior, then part of posterior mediastinum till carina at level of just superior to the heart, meet the bifurcation of pulmonary trunk. There's trachea and right bronchus and left bronchus. The trachea connected posteriorly by trachealis muscles and related posterior to the esophagus, and this allows the esophagus swallowing and because no cartilage here, and C shape of cartilage to make the trachea always patent. The most important relation of trachea here below is meeting the bifurcation of pulmonary trunk, which attach it to the two bronchi of the trachea. Okay, at level of T4 to T, disc between T4 and 5, and starting from C6. Mucosal membranes provided with ascenia. This allow the inspiral ear or expired ear run, and the mucous membrane is provided with cilia. If there is any obstruction of larynx or laryngeal obstruction, we do tracheostomy in second or third ring of the trachea to allow air enter to the respiratory system. But here we can see tracheostomy tube inserted into tracheostomy opening in the neck, because there is maybe tumors in the larynx or any pathology cause permanent obstruction to the airway. So remember that trachea starting with C cricoid cartilage and end to C carina, start from at level of C6 and end disc between T4 and T5 at level of sternal angle, dividing into two bronchi. The right main bronchus is more vertical than the left main bronchus, so the front body will be enter more to the right side. This CT visual, as you see, this trachea, carina, right bronchus and left bronchus. This red part is called COVID patches. COVID patches, as you see, is reaching to the most dependent lower part and posterior segment of the lower lobe on both sides.